Matt Verderamo, Chris Ball, welcome to the Facade Focus Podcast. Good to have you both.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
Absolutely. So we've got a bit of a different episode here, different dynamic. There's three of us here to discuss what I think you guys think is a pretty important topic. I've done a bit of an introduction separately before this. For those of you that haven't listened already, go and listen to episode 11 and you'll find out everything you need to know about Chris. And with Matt here, I'm going to hand the floor to you to give us a bit of an idea of who you are, what you're doing now, and what got you to this point.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'm pumped, and thanks, Chris, for having the idea to do this whole thing. But I'm a group director at Well-Built Construction Consulting. Ultimately, our mission at Well-Built is to help drive positive change in the construction industry. So that's what we get to go do every day. And meanwhile, that manifests itself most typically as us acting as fractional chief strategy officers to subcontractors and GCs, working on their strategic plan, executing the plan, doing training, leadership development, all that kind of stuff that goes along with growing your business and getting to the future. So really fun thing. And meanwhile, in terms of the facade world, I got here because I actually started my career when I got out of college. I went and worked for a facade contractor doing metal panels, glass and glazing, and roofing. And that is, so I got a deep love, especially for the cladding world. That was my specialty when I was there. And I ended up being a vice president of pre-construction and sales there before I made the switch over to Well-Built about 2.5 years ago. And now I'm doing this whole thing.
I love it. Let me ask you a question, Matt. What brought you over to Well-Built?
So I think the easiest way to say it, I got my master's from Purdue and part-time while I was working at the trade contractor that I worked for. And the program was all about how to run a construction business. And there was a class about strategic planning and another one about organizational development and another one about people development. And it was like my eyes were open to this idea that in the construction industry, we don't have to always be fighting the hottest fire. There's going to be a lot of fires that you got to fight, but that we can actually have a long-term plan that we're working towards. And the more that I fell in love with that, the more that I felt like there was more out there for me. And I just got really lucky that I found a company that's, exactly what we do. So I get to do it full time.
Yeah, I love that. And give us a bit of an idea on, I'm sure it's pretty obvious for everyone here, but give us an idea on how you and Chris know each other, and then I'll give the floor to Chris to give us a bit of an idea of what you're doing together at the moment.
Yeah, well, Chris, you introduced yourself to me, so do you wanna tell the story?
Yeah, I think what Matt is failing to mention is that while he was working in the facade company, a trailer specialist contractor, he was growing his voice on LinkedIn. He became a thought leader, even though he was not necessarily in the people development side. He really became a voice of clarity in terms of people development. I think in that time, probably when you started, Matt, is when I started seeing your posts, and he kind of found his voice. So during that time, I engaged with him just on some of his posts that resonated. And then he was down at Nashville for, I think it was BEC.
Yeah, yep.
And we ended up making a time to sit next to each other. We sat next to each other in one of the lectures or talks. And I just took the time to show him what we had done on Smartsheet, and I think if you have listened to the other podcasts, you know how much I can go on about Smartsheet. So I showed Matt what we had done on Smartsheet, and I think we just built a level of trust between the two of us, just sharing ideas and not worrying about, we would different companies chasing the same work. It was just two professionals coming together who are trying to make the industry better from different avenues. So yeah, that's how me and Matt met from my point of view. Matt?
nailed it. And I think, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I genuinely, sincerely, and I don't think I've ever told you this, remember when you shared with me what you were doing on Smart Sheets and like your process there. Like I remember saying to our buddy Scutch after the fact, I'm like, I can't believe that guy just came up to us and was like so willing to share information and like how he's doing things and how it's working. And it was like it was one of those moments where you realize that it's actually good to give first, and that it like makes you feel really good and trusting, you know? So like, while I appreciate that, you know, you saw my voice and everything beforehand, like that was a Kickstarter to getting to know each other, because you just led with this kind of trusting environment right away. And then, you know, to your question, Tom, about, you know, what Chris and I are doing together, funny enough, like, you know, when I made the switch to Well Built, Chris and I had stayed in touch over time, and I reached out, and frankly, I just kind of thought we were going to catch up. And I don't know if I ever told you this either, Chris, but I didn't think it was going to go anywhere, at least not immediately. I kind of had this idea that like, you know, we'll see what happens. And then I think another one of Chris's strengths is that when he knows that he wants to go get something, or if he sees value in something, he's going to go make it happen. And so, yeah, that was probably almost 2 years ago. And since then, we've been getting to do a lot of training and development, leadership development, and coaching inside their organization. So was just there last week doing a training with a big group of PMs and estimators and some other folks in the organization. So really, really good company and really good stuff. It's been great.
I love it. That takes us nicely onto the topic of today, because typically, you know, on the pod, we're talking about a really specific industry problem. We're diving into how said person and company is trying to solve it, and then how that has a positive impact on the industry. We've obviously spoken off camera about what we want to dive into, and it obviously relates directly to what you and Chris are doing and achieving as well. You know, what you're striving for. So give us a bit of a flavor as to what we're going to talk about today. And then we'll kind of go into, because obviously this, you know, as we spoke about off camera, it kind of puts me in the hot seat as well. You know, I'm usually, yes. I get the easy job. I get to talk to experts like you every week and ask you a bunch of questions, and, you know, try and help share a lot of this stuff for other people to kind of sit there and think, I'm not the only one in the industry that's going through this problem, and there may be a solution out there. So, yeah, give us an idea of what we're going to talk about today.
I think, Tom, it comes down to what you mentioned to me off the previous pod and on the previous podcast, is culture add as well as culture fit. Yeah. And that's kind of what got my wheels spinning on, you know, this is a topic that we need to discuss. I think Matt is the key person to have in this conversation. But it goes from training the employees you have, culture within the company so that even if you train them, they are happy, recruiting and how recruiting fits in, and partnering with the right recruiters. And yeah, just, I mean, an all-around cultural mindset, you know, doing things which add value to your employees that don't necessarily cost a lot of money, as well as things which are more long-term and do cost money. So that's kind of where the idea of us having this conversation came from. As you mentioned, it does put you in the hot seat, as because I know what pays the bills is not podcasts, it's recruiting.
Absolutely.
And I think within the industry, that is a conversation that needs to be had, because there are recruiters who don't add as much value as they could. And I think that is a problem that we are facing, is that they're pushing a product, and the product is people, and it's not necessarily the correct person for the company. It's more just about volume. And that's something I've appreciated with our relationship, Tom, is that you have seen us people, but it's always been very well people that matched our need.
Yeah.
As opposed to just every resume that comes across your desk. So that's kind of in my mind, what we're discussing today, Matt.
Yeah.
Talent. Yeah, I think that's the right way to put it. It's talent. It's how are you keeping your talent? How are you making your talent feel important and ultimately, what are you doing to go find talent in different ways? So, yeah, no, and there's a huge component of this, which is the reinvestment piece. And I think maybe the thing that I'll just share at the outset here, it's a concept that has been becoming clearer and clearer to me as I have spent time doing what I'm doing. But it ultimately comes down to the fact that organizations, let me start here. Employees, I think there's a growing number of employees who have a certain expectation that their company should treat them some way, or that they should automatically get bonuses, or that they should automatically get training, or whatever those things are. And I think those are good aspirational things, and that I'm not telling employees not to think that. However, I also think that there's a lack of understanding amongst employees that in order for a business to do all of those things, the business needs to be profitable. And without being profitable, all that employee happiness and making everybody feel good, I've seen it. I've seen it. I've been in organizations where they prioritize that without putting a prioritization on profit and excellence. And those organizations have struggled and end up in this place where people are complacent because they're not being pushed to do what they need to do, and they're getting bonuses regardless. And there's, a lot of, enabling of poor behaviors. And so, conversely, then on the organizational side, there are lots of organizations that make money and believe because they're making money that that's enough and that they don't need to reinvest back into their people. And so there is this, again, it's just this idea has been becoming clearer and clearer to me, but really what the best construction companies are doing is that they are prioritizing both people and profit and finding the right mix between those two so that they're reinvesting back in their staff, because happy people end up making you more profitable. It's a very real thing.
Do you know why it's so interesting? Because when I hear you talk about that, Matt, I think the second point, the companies that are super profitable and they're not reinvesting in their people, or, maybe they're resting on their laurels, they're complacent maybe as a business because they've been, knocking it out of the park in terms of profitability. I think in the States, we've had, a decade and a half of a bit of a bull run in construction. Yes, there's been some ups and downs, but it's not been the case where there's been 3 years where people have just been scratching around for work over the last 15 years. It seemed to be pretty good for a while now. And those companies that do get complacent, when work does dry up a little bit, you're then looking at you people that we're not as profitable now. Suddenly they're a product of their own environment. They've been either not getting bonuses or they have been getting bonuses. And then the tide shifts. It's like, well, okay, now our backs are up against the wall. How do we operate? And if it's just business as usual, you've got your staff is based on how you've operated over the last. And I say it's a bull run. Obviously, there's companies out there that have felt it a lot more since COVID, and that's obviously a bit of a freak incident. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think the not the broken mindset, but this is the way we've always done it kind of mindset comes in a lot to that as well. So yeah, it can be a mindset, and it is a two-way street. The employees are there they've got to be open-minded to be able to operate in a different way. And I think the business owners do as well. But yeah, reinvesting in your people. And I think that obviously should come before recruiting as well. You've got to look at what you already have, the assets within your business, which are employees. And it was funny, I had a conversation 2 days ago, and I thought of you both. It was quite poignant leading up to the conversation we're having today. And I came away for it, and I've got my mum visiting us this week, and I sat on the sofa and spoke to her about it for about 10 minutes afterwards. And I spoke to a company where they wanted to hire a project manager, and they thought they needed a project manager. We sat down. We kind of got talking a little bit, and when someone's coming out to hire, actively, tell me what's the business doing? Why should someone come and join? Should they come and join you? Why do you think you need a PM? Okay, what type of PM? What should they be doing? What does 12 months from now, if they've nailed it, what good things will they have done in the next 12 months? All that sort of good stuff. And I came, it was like 14, 15 minutes into this call, and just kind of jumped in and said, you don't need a PM. You don't need to hire anyone. You've got two people sat there that it sounds to me that they're at like 40% capacity,
Right.
maybe 50 at a push, and they're kind of telling me how their how they win business, their relationship with the architects and the GCs, and then we stripped it back as to I've got this estimator sat here, and then this PM sat here, and this is what they're doing. It's like, guys, you need to look at these two. Forget me, call me in 6 months, but these guys need, not call it pushing, call it encouraging, whatever,
Sure.
phrase or however you want to come at it. These guys need to be doing more before you even add someone to the mix. Because if you want me to go out and find you a superstar PM, if I go and find you that superstar PM and sit them next to these two, that PM is going to turn around and look at me and say, what the hell is this? I'm going to come in here and I'm expected to do this, and these two are at 40% capacity. Like, guarantee you in 2 months you're going to be calling me and saying he's left or she's left, because that's not an environment that, if you're going to hire superstars, you can't sit them next to these two that are at 40% capacity and totally uninspiring. So reinvesting in your engaging and reinvesting in your staff is, even as a recruiter, which, as advice, Chris said, 4 or 5 minutes ago, the way that my business runs is by placing people in businesses, but I can see down the line that's just a problem waiting to happen. So yeah, I think the reinvesting piece. Now, looking at what you're doing with Chris, tell us a little bit about how you guys go about that. So reinvesting in people, leadership, and bringing people up through the business as a concept is great. How do we actually go and do that?
We can just take one step back. I think one thing that I also mentioned, which is important to reaffirm, is the TikTok generation has a desire to have things immediately, right? And I'm not saying it's one age group or whatever. It's just TikTok and that whole thing. Everyone has Lambos and whatever, and you're looking at these people, they're 20 years old, and you're like, how the heck have they got that? I want that. And so what I have experienced is that there's a lot of, as Matt says, they expect a lot from the company. Well, I want to have this. I want to be a project manager by this. I want to be a senior project manager within a year, and I want to be a project executive running PMs by the time I'm, let's say, 5 years in the business.
Yeah.
Well, some of the best project executives are guys who have 30, 40 years running running jobs, and now they have graduated to that, And I think it's hard to, with people, make them self-aware of what they know and what they don't know. And that's a really hard part is, we have to do training, but part of the training is to almost show people, there's a huge amount of knowledge out there. You are 10% in, and now your expectation that you are going to become a senior PM in a year is not reality. And that's also training, and you're training people's mindsets. I mean, we want good people. We want people to be driven. We want them to be motivated. We want them to want to be a senior PM. But if you're not a senior PM, you can't say, well, this is what I want, so I'm going to go find it. And this is where the recruiting comes in. Ultimately, if you have a PM who now tells you, hey, Tom, I was a project manager at McDougall. I ran jobs up to $10 million. And obviously every one of his jobs was successful on time and on budget, because that's what they tell the recruiters. You can go get him placed, right? You can get him placed in another company, and he can go or she can go get a job as a senior PM. But the reality is that when they get there, they're going to be totally underqualified, totally lacking experience, never engaged in what a senior PM or a project executive has done. And so with our training is trying to show, there is so much more. You have to engage in it. You almost have to shine light, and this is all the areas that you are going to get experience in, but you're not doing it now because you're not there. And that's the hard part, and that's kind of what Matt's been tasked with in the industry, I think, is showing, there is so much more.
And as well, project manager through experience means so many different things to so many different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like you take 5 random companies from the industry. A project manager does multiple different things at different levels.
One of my PMs said to me, he goes, he came from a roofing company. He goes, we do so much more at McDougall, but what I've realized is you're training us to run a little company. I was like, yeah, project manager, your job is a little company. So everything that goes on there, you should be able to manage.
You're an entrepreneur.
Other companies, like PM doesn't order, the PM doesn't do this, the PM doesn't do this. So it's very hard to recruit within an industry where, as you say, every company has a different standard. And that's why Matt's going to standardize the industry.
Yeah, something like that. Well, no, and I'm glad that you brought up the visibility thing, Chris, because that was one of the things you said to me in one of our conversations about a month ago. And I think, this idea transitions in a good couple of ways for the conversation. But, you had said something to me like, I've got to give people visibility because visibility is light. And when you have the light shown on you, you can't hide in the shadows. And what many, so I mentioned that I don't believe as much as I say, you've got to prioritize profit and people. I don't believe that it is just inherently the business's requirement to do everything for the individual in order for them to get to where they want to get to. There's so much hard work that has to come from the individual to get there. Now, meanwhile, what I do know that companies absolutely need to do in terms of retaining people and dealing with the TikTok generation and the instant gratification and all that stuff is, one, they've got to set really clear expectations. They've got to say, this is what a project manager does. This is the role. These are the competencies you must meet. And then I love all of those having some data-backed numbers that go along with them. You've got to be able to manage this amount of work. You've got to be able to retain this book of business. You've got to be able to deliver projects within 3% of budget each and every time over 9 months, over 12 months. Once you do all of these things, then you can go to that next level. And what a lot of companies do instead of setting that clear expectation is they keep it fuzzy because they don't exactly know. And then one person's a PM when another one's a senior, but that one's a senior just because they've been here a while and we felt bad. So we called them a senior and we wanted them to feel good. So I know that companies need to set clear expectations. And this is the hard and scary part, but it is a requirement, is to then hold people accountable to those expectations. Mm-hmm. You've got to make the non-negotiable thing put in front of people and then keep drilling it home to them that this is what you have to do to get there. And you don't have to be rude in the way that you do it. You actually encourage people that, like, you're getting there, but these are the things that you have to meet to be able to get to this role. And then the third component that I will say, if you want to, that companies need to do if you want to retain these people, is help them to get there. Set the clear expectation, hold them accountable to the expectation, and then help them to get there, which is coaching. And that can be internal coaching. It's career development conversations. Where do you want to get to and when? Why? What skills do you feel like you need? Here's a class you can go take. Here's a training that we can offer here. Whatever those things are. And ultimately, one of my favorite things in organizations is when, like, an APM or a PM will say, and you'll hear this in really good organizations where you've got the clear expectations and people consistently held accountable to them and people that are helping them to get there. You'll hear APMs or PMs say things like, I know I'm not a senior yet. I know I'm not. I know I got to do this, this, and this, and I know I got to get there. Like, please just, like, help me to do what I got to do. I want it so bad. And those are the really cool places to be, because then you've got a bunch of people that are rowing the boat in the same direction and driving towards excellence instead of just expecting to be given something.
But Matt, you mentioned you mentioned a whole lot of different trainings and things. I think one key is it's not just the company's responsibility. It is as much the employee's responsibility to be like, hey, this is what I want. These are the trainings I think I have. And then the boss or whoever it is might be like, I agree, let's do this, but let's also add these on. And thank you for bringing it to me. I love it when people come and say, hey, there's this training going on. Do you mind if I go on it?
100%.
I think it's the company's responsibility to make sure there's a budget for it, there's a desire for it, but it's also employees to say, hey, this is what I want, this is what I think I need, to some degree. There's certain things that
Totally.
they're not going to see that they need, and that's where management comes in and says, we're going to send people on this. When a PM comes and says, I want to do this course, I love it. It's the greatest thing. It's like, how much is it? $2,000? Okay, let's do it.
I totally agree. I've seen that firsthand as well, even before people have, started in new companies. I had a really good designer who did a lot of work in Rhino, and the company that they were interviewing for was operating a lot in Revit. They were unemployed at the time, but they'd off their own back gone and found out that, and don't quote me on the specifics of it, but there is a course somewhere online where if you are unemployed, you can actually take some of these courses for free. I don't know what they call it in the States, but there's grants or there's opportunities for people that are unemployed. So they went off and they said, look, I know we're only interviewing at the moment, but I've signed up for these introductions to Revit. I know that I'm a good designer, but my Rhino experience is directly related to Revit, and they went and did it off their own back. And that to the hiring manager is a huge tick in the right box, because it shows the commitment.
Totally.
One's going to go off their own back. They're not waiting to say, okay, we'll hire you and here's all your training, kind of waiting for them to come to you. One question I did have, Matt, on what you said there, with the expectations when you're setting it out, are you big on time-bound expectations as well for those? Hey, look, this is what you need to be able to do. Do you set kind of time boundaries on when you would expect them to get there? Or is it a case of this is open, it's up to you when you get there?
Yeah, it's great. I usually find myself, so merit-based. If you are ready and you are meeting the expectations, force my hand. And I still think that the coolest way to get a promotion is to just start doing the job. Just do the freaking job. And at some point, and this happens, and it really does, your boss, if you have a good boss and you're in a worthwhile organization, they will come to you and they will say, hey, I feel like you're not even a PM anymore, you're a senior PM, or hey, I feel like you're not a PM, you're really the director of our project management team, because you have organized meetings, you have made sure that the WIP is updated every month, you have done all of the things to cement yourself in that role. And so, more power to you. And, I think it's important just to, I think it's less time related, but that, when you do have junior staff, that you just make sure that they know that, look, you're running a marathon, not a sprint. Like, keep picking up knowledge along the way. No, there's no specific time bound function here. But with that being said, there is a lot of competency that you need to have. And in order for you to get that, there is going to be a time component. And if you want to speed up that process, and, not to sound harsh, but this is just real shit, like, get into the office at 5 o'clock in the morning and work from 5 to 7 every day. Because if you're there from 5 till 7, Monday through Friday, you've just picked up 10 hours a week on all of your peers. And if you want to speed up the process, that's how you go about doing it.
Yeah, I love that.
I think it's like, don't wait to ask for permission. I was actually having a chat with one of my project executives yesterday, and someone had put together, there was a checklist of things, and I was like, why do we need a checklist for this? One of the items was about building relationships with general contractors, and I was like, well, we don't need a checklist for this. Just do it. Like,
get on with it. Yeah.
Like, why aren't you doing it already?
Do the
why
thing.
Not ask permission to do that? Just do it.
So
at 25, when I got into roofing originally, I had no business doing what I was doing. I certainly didn't ask anyone permission. Looking back now, I had no clue what I was doing, but I just did it.
Yeah.
The same project executive in his 20s ran a hotshot company, like a Julie truck with a trailer. I was like, did you ask anyone permission in your 20s to do it? He's like, no, I just did it. It's like, yeah, just do it.
Get on with it. Yeah. I think there was two questions off the back of that I'm furiously writing down because I didn't want to forget them. But there's all of that advice I love is just, set clear boundaries, set clear expectations, and hold people accountable for it. Two things with my recruiter head on.
Mm-hmm.
One, and to give a bit of context, so with the young, call them the TikTok generation, younger generation.
Let's just call it
the younger generation. When I'm, they'll come to me and they'll have heard of these big brands and these big companies. Maybe it's not a big company, maybe it's just a well-recognized brand. And my advice always to them is, if you are going to join a big company or a brand that is well-recognized, focus on who your manager is. Yes, you've got this big brand around you, but you're as a young person coming through the industry, you want someone that is their department, their whole process is set up for you to learn, for you to come in and soak in all this information. And that's what's going to pay dividends, not just joining a company because they kind of work on this stuff. So for companies that aren't set up the way that we're talking about, what would your advice be to someone that is doing all the stuff that you do? And I know them, I speak to them all week, every week, where they are doing these things, but the company is set up where they don't recognize them for certain things. They're taken advantage of by nothing happening when they kind of go over and above. And obviously they're sometimes the people that call me, what can they be doing when they're in a bit of a sticky scenario?
People, it's interesting. People get really goofy when money is involved. And actually, one of the principles that my boss passed down to me that I just thought was great advice. Are we allowed to cuss on this podcast, by the way? Is that okay?
It is.
Okay, cool. One of the principles that he shared with me was, don't fuck with people's money when times are good.
Yeah.
Because companies will start making money, and they wanted to make $1 million in that, and all of a sudden they're making 1.5. And for some reason, even though $1 million was going to be good enough, as soon as you start getting 1.5, then you wish it was 1.7, and then you start going, well, this is mine and it should be mine. And people get really, really goofy. And I'm, and it's a hard challenge to be a business owner. And I really do empathize with anybody that's in that position. And I think it's really important not to fuck with people's money when times are good. And if you're making money, to take care of your people in return. And so, I think that answers your question in one way in terms of, how a company might need to shift their mindset. Because here's the biggest challenge with that. You are not going to change your culture as an individual employee. You can have an influence on your immediate sphere, and that influence can end up catching fire. And if your top leadership is not committed to the ideals and the values and the way that, you believe things should be, they need to make that decision themselves, because they really do. They're the straw that stirs the drink in making those kinds of changes. So if you are caught in one of those environments, what I would encourage you to do is do everything you can to influence your sphere of control. Do everything that you can to influence your leadership to recognize why it's been positive. And if you're consistently not getting the reward for it, or you feel like they're not being trustworthy of you or whatever, and they're still not giving you the value, I can tell you for sure, I think a lot of individual employees don't realize how much value they have in the construction industry, especially if they're a hard worker. There are companies out there that would love to have you. Companies like John W. McDougall that would say, we're going to take great care of you, and we're going to make sure that you get to where you want to get to, and we're going to invest in you, and come bring your hard work, and we'd be happy to take good care of you. So there does get to a point, not that I want to encourage everybody on this, podcast to leave their businesses, but I do want to say that, if you get to a point where you lose faith that that's going to happen, that you should see what else is out there. But Chris, I wonder, how does that, what do you think of that? How does that square with your thinking?
I think every company is going to have challenges. We certainly put a lot of effort and emphasis into culture and training, but I don't think any company is going to be a perfect fit for any employee. I think there are just sometimes clashes that happen. If you are not getting the recognition, you're not getting the support and the training, then there are many reasons to find recruiter like Tom to place you somewhere else.
There you go. There's the plug.
I would first say, if you are feeling that way, have a conversation with your manager. If your
yes, good point.
Yes.
If your manager is just like cog in the wheel and not the decision maker, then ask your manager if you can sit down with the actual decision maker, include your manager, and explain how you feel. There's always, there's three. There's your point of view, their point of view, and the reality in the middle. There was a post on LinkedIn yesterday that said, if you ask your PMs and your estimators and your drafters for every dollar you make through the business, how many cents do you keep? I think there's a misconception about how many, okay, gross profit in a job is 30%, great. What is it actually net profit? And not many companies are as transparent when it comes to what the actual overhead cost is. So while Matt's saying, these guys, okay, we don't fuck with your money when times are good. If the misconception is that times are good when they're actually not, because your overhead is blown up and rent's killer and you have a fleet of vehicles and things, and the company's actually losing money, but your PMs think, hey, we're making so much money, but the reality is you're not. That needs to be aligned before you say, hey, I'm going to go find another job. And so,
what a freaking great point.
My suggestion would be have a conversation, have an open conversation, have very clear questions that you want to ask. But on the company side, you need to be honest with your employees as well. Knowledge is power for the employee, for the company, and for the industry. And understanding the bigger picture gives the PM power to negotiate better out in the market with your general contractors and vendors and things. But also it helps grow the culture of transparency and visibility and trust. I mean, I don't want to have employees that I don't trust. Like if he's going to a job site, I don't want to be like, hey, did he actually go to the job site or did he go home? Like, but if I can't trust him there or her, but I don't trust them with the overhead, how much we're actually making net profit. There's this lack of trust between the two, and that festers through the culture. So, as Matt mentioned in the beginning, lead with trust, show people information, expect that back. But as a project manager, if your managers aren't giving you more information, ask specific questions. If you still get cold-shouldered and aren't showing it, then maybe it is best to be somewhere where they respect you, because if you're getting shut out of information which is key to your decision-making in projects and in whatever you're doing, I think there's a fundamental lack of respect as well.
Totally agree.
I
wrote that down. You probably can't see it on the third question, but that exactly what you just said, I could not agree with more. And I get the phone calls of, hey, look, I need to move because this is going on. And you'll kind of dig deep. And like one of the questions I will ask is, have you spoken to anyone about this? Like, do they have an opportunity to fix this for you? So obviously a big part of my job is, you take someone through an interview process, they get an offer, hand their resignation in, and suddenly the hiring manager says, well, why are you leaving? So because of this. So I didn't even know. And then they fix it, and then that's an issue for them, for the company hiring, everything. So one of the first things is, okay, you're moving companies to solve this problem. How have you already approached this in your current company? Like, well, I haven't. Well, before you call me back, go and have that conversation. And if it's something they're going to address, let's talk. Because there's lots of other companies out there that are going to appreciate what you're doing, but if you haven't even addressed it yet, then I think that's on them as well as the company.
And the reality is finding a recruiter and paying you time to find me a replacement PM. If I spend half that money on sending this person on a huge training course and things, it's still half the price,
Yeah.
So once again, invest in your people. Don't be trying to spend it.
And they're a known entity. They're a known entity. If they're already working at the business, you've got to know that person and you understand how they work. And so always reinvest and, as you said, communicate with them.
One of the questions you asked in the beginning was how, I'm jumping back into your
No, good.
What's how Matt and McDougall are working together.
Yeah.
If you want to, I think I kind of put us off on the sideline earlier. So Matt actually joined to train Wiley McDougall, who's our fourth generation, who's coming up. And so Matt came in just as a single trainer to do a single person, and we've grown it from there. Because I think, and the reason I bring this up is fitting the right training group to the organization at the right time is key as well. When I joined McDougall 5 years ago, I brought in a guy from Utah, actually, he had trained us at my previous company, Josh, and he is ex-Marine, I'm probably butchering that. I think he was an ex-SEAL, Navy SEAL. So, he'll probably be pissed about that. But, very, very regimented, like the kind of guy you would expect, I called him GI Josh because he was, still very in shape, very like in the box, you have your right hand man, you follow the rules, this is the way it is. And at that time, that is exactly what I needed. I needed people to be pulled together to understand that the mission is bigger than them. It's get rid of all this bickering and things, and let's figure out where we're going, how we're getting there. As time has progressed, I don't need that kind of training anymore. I need the soft, and sorry, Matt, I'm not calling you soft. But
that's okay. I am.
The soft side. I need we know where we're going. We know the marching orders. How do we make sure that we're not losing people along the way? And how do we train them and things? So I think you have to find the right trainer at the right time for your company. And it is specific and it's calculated. Like a lot of these decisions people think are just, here's a trainer, I like their price and put it in. It's more than that. You actually need to be calculated. What am I trying to achieve? What is the end value? Matt's now training. I think, Matt, you're just doing one, and then we have two other trainers doing other people in the company, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
There are 4 people going with one-on-one training with Wellbuilt. We do group training quarterly with the entire whoever I want in the company to come in, and we do a group training. In fact, last training we did it on recruiting and how we don't want to spend money on recruiters, but rather recruit. Sorry, Tom. Because your people are your best recruiters, and this is the kind of training that we're putting in there, and it costs money. It's certainly not free.
No, that is maybe something that I hadn't even thought about either. Is the right trainer at the right time as well? Because if you switch those around, Wellbit maybe came in before. I don't think I know Josh well enough to call him GI Josh yet, but
I don't think he knows I called him that either.
He's just about to find out. You switch that around, and maybe the dynamic doesn't work, and it kind of needed that as things were growing, and then to come in and refine it a bit more as to how we're going to bring people along, and as you said, not lose those people. One question I did have just before I jump into you, Max, I want you to talk about what Chris has just mentioned there. When we're talking about, people taking the responsibility to kind of go over and above, and as we talked about before, kind of just do the job you want. I see a lot of companies where managers are too busy operating, that they're still head in the weeds, that them having the visibility themselves, not even giving the people that are in their team the visibility, but actually having visibility themselves to see what's going on. I'm thinking maybe design managers that are, still involved in the day-to-day output of design, that maybe they do have the time, maybe they don't, but the designers can't kind of step up and take on more responsibility because they're not being managed, or the manager just has not got, in their world, they're not set up to have the time to help mentor and give these people a path. Now, I'm not excusing them for setting the expectations and the boundaries, because I think that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, is setting, but actually monitoring that as it goes on. How do people get out of their own head and kind of step away when they're thinking, we have work, these projects need to be delivered, and I'm the guy that's kind of delivering most of it, so I don't have time for the team to kind of pull them up? How would you approach that?
Totally. There's two thoughts that come to mind. The first one is that the middle managers in the construction industry are one of the most underserved levels of the organization, because what is the common practice in construction? You're the best at running work. We're going to now promote you to senior PM. You're now going to run PMs. And if you've ever talked to anybody who's gone from just managing projects to managing people, it's pretty hilarious, because they're pretty consistently like, I thought running projects was hard. Managing people is way freaking harder than running projects. Yeah. And meanwhile, most of our companies don't give us any kind of real formal, here's how you transition from being project manager to people manager, whether it's coaching, training, whatever. And I'm not even saying it has to be third party. I'm just saying, like, internally, that you really even prepare people for that change. So that's one thing itself, is to just, there's a change in expectations. There's a change in role requirements when you go into managing people. And so again, you've just got to be extremely clear with what those are, and provide people some resources so that they can do that. Beyond that, even if you do that, one of the things that I've noticed over and over again is that delivering for customers, when you are a ambitious person, is like an addiction. You get this dopamine rush every time you go and you save the day for the customer, and it feels really good. And it's hard to kick your addiction to that when you get promoted into the people manager role. And so what I find myself doing a lot of coaching and training about with people that are getting into those new management roles is that, frankly, your addiction needs to change. You need to stop being addicted to delivering for customers, and you need to start becoming addicted to delivering through your team, and being addicted to watching them deliver for the customers. Because until you do that, you will absolutely fill up your 50-hour week with project-related work and not people-related work. It's going to be natural to you. And maybe just the last thing I'll say on that, in terms of kicking that addiction, that I found to be, really helpful for people, is if you think about a typical week for you, how many of your hours, let's just say you work a 40-hour week, although I think 50 hours is probably more honest for, ambitious professionals in the construction industry. But let's just say you work a 40-hour week. Well, how many hours of the week are you spending on billable time, which ultimately comes down to working on the project? Well, the lower you are in the organization, the more that you should be aiming towards almost 100% billability, that you should be all over projects all the time. And frankly, you're probably over 100% billable because you're working more than 40 hours a week. As you transition into those people management roles, I want you to start targeting more like 75% billable time, where instead of spending 40 hours a week, you're spending 35 or 34, and you're taking those 6 hours and you're kicking them from project work and you're kicking them to people development work. And sometimes just that simple shift in mindset of like, where is my time going, helps people to realize like, oh shit, I have been just so focused on being, the same that I've always been, that I've never really given myself a target to work towards in terms of my people development time.
That's so interesting. I've never looked at it as an addiction, because I've always had this like, and you might poo-poo this myth, but I've seen it a lot, that the best operators aren't always the best managers, and
totally
that like, but then you look at the company and maybe you've got a project executive that just kills it running the projects. and you want to promote them, and you feel like you need to promote them, and that next bump up is maybe, director or project management. Maybe they move into like a senior ops role, but they're not that person, and actually that's quite tricky, I think, for the companies that like this guy or gal is absolutely killing it. Like this, I need to give them something, and maybe they expect the promotion, but when you're just a great operator, but you're not suited to the people management, I think that's where a lot of the industry struggles with. How do you manage that? I've seen no end of, funnily enough, estimators end up in sales roles, and kind of like head of business development and sales. Maybe they kind of work their way through estimating, kind of these pre-construction roles. They end up in like head of BD and sales. Because they're putting these bids together, and then you take them from being quite insular in the fact that they're, building these bids and kind of in their own world sometimes, and then you send them out to go and kind of develop and generate business and move into more of a people client facing role, and it's a disaster.
Yeah, they crash and burn.
Yeah, and
promoted to the highest level of incompetence.
Yeah, and you've actually, what you've done is, they might be the best estimator in the world. You've basically said, I don't want you to do anything of what you are good at, and I'm going to put you into something that I have no idea whether you can even do, but it's a promotion, so off you go. So you've lost however much of your estimating capacity of that person is, you've lost all of that, and then you've now sent them out into client-facing roles, being the face of the business. And they can't do that, which is damaging. Builds what? Takes you decades to build your reputation, a couple of minutes to ruin it. And companies managing that operator to manager role, I think, is one of the trickiest scenarios to get around. And I haven't even got an answer for it. But
I think one of the other key things that you mentioned, not only about getting addicted to helping people, Matt, is your billable time. And it just kind of dawned on me while you were saying it. My first role in America was as a consultant, and everything was about billable time. And our principal, who's a very smart guy, his billable time was like 130%. And I was like, how the heck are you 130% billable? And it's because when he was driving home, he was on a phone call. When he was driving to work, he was on a phone call all the time. And it's all billable time, And it's something that we put on our engineering team, that I expect 100% billable time for the drafters. I haven't had that conversation with project managers because it's so much harder to actually quantify. But I think you summed it up really well. Is that if you're working on a project, it's a billable time. So let's define that. And I think after this, I'm actually going to go and push that with the PMs. 75% should be on projects, 25% should be on yourself.
Yeah.
Love that.
Great. And I've not thought either of when you're actually, in the project and, you're on billable time, there's a lot of metrics and targets and like all this sort of data that you're kind of working towards and from and using. Managing people, like I can't imagine many people are putting metrics and data and targets, and it's just like, you kind of manage the team, like talk to your team, like making that a formality and putting some actual parameters around it is a great idea, and kind of puts people in the scenario where you got to now, I don't know, Thursday afternoon, you are not doing billable work.
Yeah.
This is about managing the team. What does the team need from you? What do you need from the team? Like, that's an interesting thought.
We're probably getting to the end of our time, Tom, but we haven't really put a lot of pressure on you as a recruiter. But what I would say is maybe a thought near the end is that having someone that you can shoot the shit with about these sort of ideas is integral. Matt and me don't talk as often as I would like, but every time we do talk, I certainly get pearls of wisdom, like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, and go, and it helps me further. So you need a peer that you respect, who is working in a similar kind of field, who is trying to get the same results, that you can be honest and shoot the shit with, and then a lot of great ideas come of them. So.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
I agree.
I think that's kind of summarizes everything we're talking about. I love it as an ending point.
Yeah. No, it's this has been great. I think we could have probably spoken for another 3 hours, but
absolutely.
Maybe we didn't get to put the pressure on you, Tom. So we're gonna have to do a rematch.
Yeah, that's. Hey, look, I'm in the hot seat. I'm ready for it. And I'm passionate about it as well, about the industry. And I'm certainly not perfect. Every day for me is, I look left and right and think, how do I improve what I do? How I do it? Communication. And at the end of the day, when you're working with a recruiter or you're not working with a recruiter, you're always dealing with human beings. So there's always an element of the unknown. But I think if you've got the right intentions, you're asking the right questions, and you just take the time to understand, I think the only thing that, well, I'll take that back, it's not the only thing, one of many things that's an issue with our industry can sometimes be the goals and the metrics from management. We're almost treating people as numbers. When you look at these big businesses, we want, looking at it from the top, we want X amount of revenue, which equals X amount of placements, which we need to be working at a certain percentage and profit margin. And it becomes very transactional from a business perspective. When we're not pushing a product. We're dealing with human beings, and human beings have lives. They have families. They have unforeseen circumstances. Like, excuse my language, but shit happens sometimes. It just does. And if you're in a business that requires you to generate a certain amount of revenue or placement, I think sometimes the industry forgets that you can't make this happen. You have to bring people together, and kind of, if it happens, it will happen. But you can't force these things through, because it is human beings that we're dealing with here. So yeah, I'm happy to be in the hot seat for the follow up of this. But I want to conclude this with firing some quick fire questions at Max. I'm interested in how he's going to react to these. So I'm going to pull them up, and we'll.
Awesome. I'm interested to hear some more too.
Yeah.
Learn some of Matt's quirks.
Yeah, here we go. Right.
I have no idea what's coming, so I'm curious to hear.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out a little bit about you, I'm sure. It's nothing too deep, but I'll keep them quick fire. But a couple of them you might need to kind of pause and think for. But we'll dive straight into it. So, favorite food?
Pizza.
Sports team?
Ravens. Baltimore Ravens.
Hang on the pizza. Sorry, ham and pineapple on the pizza. Is that acceptable?
I'll eat. I don't have like me. I'm soft, right? So I don't have like a strong take on that. I'll eat it, but it's not what I'm choosing. All right, but if it's there, I'm not like, oh my god, you've got ham and pineapple on your pizza. I'm like, all right, I'll eat the ham and pineapple pizza, and I'm going to be grateful for it because it's still pizza.
Yeah.
Feel strongly against ham. I love ham and pineapple, but some people feel really strongly against it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. Like, pizza's good enough. Like, you want to put ham and pineapple on it, like, bring it to the table.
Cheers. Yeah. I'm happy.
Favorite city and why?
Oh, that's a good question. I might actually say New York City. And I think I was just blown away. I think I always viewed New York as like this scary, unattainable thing before I'd ever really gone there. And then I went and I was like, it is so cool. Like, it is just always buzzing. The food's great. There's stuff to do. Like, and I'm not like a big go out until 5 o'clock in the morning guy, but like just everything else that goes along with it. Love New York City. And also a very good example of like capitalism at work, where like it's a very impressive town.
Yeah. Favorite hobby?
Probably walking.
Nice. To the level of hiking and trail hiking, or just walking around, kind of letting the thoughts flow?
That I do love hiking, but I would say just in general, like every day I'm usually walking somewhere between 1 and 3 miles, and that is the best thinking time, the best reflecting time, all that kind of stuff.
Favorite book or movie?
Favorite book or movie? My favorite movie of all time, probably shouldn't say this one to say it anyway, is Pineapple Express. So I'll go with that answer. So if you've never seen Pineapple Express, Chris, your face looks a little bit searching. You should watch it. But
the origins of ham and pineapple on pizza.
Yeah.
Thinking about the Christmas movie. What's that Express one?
Polar Express.
Polar
No,
Express,
very different movie than Polar Express. Yeah,
I
very different movie.
I can see it when you pizza and watching the Polar Express.
Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh man, that's so hard. I'll say that pay attention to your energy. That my mentor gave me that advice probably 3 years ago, and he said just pay attention to what gives you energy and what takes it away. And that was at a point in my life where I needed to hear that.
Love that. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Winston Churchill. And because I'm in the middle of reading book 3 of his 6-volume series on World War II, and I would love to. I just think, first of all, I'd love to be around him, and second of all, he's definitely a fun hang. I mean, he starts drinking brandy and smoking cigars at 8 a.m. So he's a fun hang. That's
an interesting character to be around. Right, I got to switch these 2 questions up because of the next 2. I need to bring this one earlier, so I need to think about which one I'm going to ask. Okay, so number 1 thing on your bucket list, but it cannot be about travel.
Oh, man. Number 1 thing on my bucket list. Going to New Zealand.
Why?
Oh, you just said, sorry, you said it couldn't be travel. Sorry.
We'll get to the travel one. The next one's travel. So I keep screwing this up. I put the number 1 bucket thing on your bucket list, and everyone says like, I want to go to Japan or South Africa or New Zealand. And then I ask them, if you go anywhere, where do you want to travel? So without the travel.
Without the travel, boy, this is going to be a really soft answer, but I feel like you got to answer these questions with the first thing that came to your mind. This is not a cool bucket list item, but I want to be a really good dad. That is something in the long term. Just want to be a really good dad.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's the first thing that jumps to mind.
Yeah. Difficult one to do.
Yeah.
I've got 2 young ones, and that's always on my mind. But yeah, no, I do really love that. But the next question we know is going to be New Zealand. So what I'm going to ask you is, why do you want to go to New Zealand? What's there for you?
Yeah, awesome. Because I'm a gigantic Lord of the Rings fan. And and I would love to go walk the same places that Frodo and the gang was traversing, and it just looks beautiful because we do love being outside and hiking, and I think islands are one of the fun places. But yeah, it does have a special place in my heart because of Lord of the Rings.
Cool. If I could give you a mulligan or a redo on any decision you've ever made, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. A mulligan or redo on a decision I never made. I feel like it's probably something that I didn't do versus something that I did do. Like there's probably some moment in my life where if I would have done something differently, it would have turned out differently. I don't know. I live with different things, but regret isn't typically one of them. So, I don't know. Pass. Am I allowed to pass?
Yeah, you can pass it. I think the answer there is that, certainly for me, something I believe is that I think you regret the things you don't do rather than things you do.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I think, that's a great ending to the pod, Matt. We're going to have to do another one of these. I appreciate an hour of both of your time, so I know it is super valuable. Thank you for joining me again, Chris. Again, just on the episode, so if you've not listened already, Chris gave us a great episode on episode 11, accountability, visibility in your business, so go and listen to that. Matt, we'll have you on again. And gents, this has been a pleasure. 100%.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. Great time. Talk to you.